Bum 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 bum. That's what I was thinking of when I saw the title for this one. Little Halloween, Little John Carpenter. Is that what we got? Stay tuned. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor, and I'll be your host as we go through all the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out our introduction video. There's a link to it in the description below, and it'll give you a pretty good sense of what we do here at the Horror Movie Syllabus. In short, we look at a particular subgenre of horror, and then we pick 3 movies from that subgenre to explore. But this is our Is It Syllabus-Worthy series. This is where I take a recommendation from you guys, a horror movie that I've never seen before that you recommend in the comments to my videos or whatever. I check it out for the very first time, and then I'll let you know. Is it syllabus-worthy? Is there something about it that makes it worthy of being on the Horror Movie Syllabus? And today, the movie that we're looking at is Mr. Sandman. Mr. Sandman was recommended by Sasha, aka Horror Vixen 25. And Sasha reached out via social media to make this recommendation to me, which is fine. It's not a recommendation in one of the videos, but it is, perfectly fine. I have no problem taking recommendations any way you want to give them to me, frankly. And Sasha didn't give me a whole lot of context about this movie other than I should just check it out. It's one that she recommended. And after seeing it and figuring out what it was, started wondering if maybe Sasha was kind of just doing a little self-promotion, maybe she was involved in the production of this, but I couldn't find any evidence of that. I didn't see anything in the credits that led me to believe that Sasha was somebody who worked in the movie, but maybe. It doesn't really matter, frankly. I had no problem checking out the recommendation because, like I said, it was something that was reminding me a little bit of Halloween by the title alone, and since we're in spooky season and this video should be dropping right around that hot time, I thought it would be a good one to check out, so that's what I did. I checked it out, and did I like it? Did I hate it? Well, let's find out. Like I said, the movie that we're looking at today is Mr. Sandman. Mr. Sandman came out in 2024 and is actually a short film. It's about 35 minutes long, and I don't usually cover short films here on the channel, but I have in the past. I did The Strange Thing About the Johnsons come to mind as one that I've done, so it's not like I never do it, but it's kind of rare. But I decided to go ahead and go forward with this one, even though I saw the length of it. And it's directed by somebody named Matthew I. Schmidt, who I'm not familiar with, and has just a handful of credits. Not very many credits in there, but they seem to be kind of horror-related, so he seems like he's in the horror vein, and that's kind of his shtick. And he's done something here that, well, frankly, it was worth talking about, so we're going to talk about it in just a second. First, if you haven't seen it before, the movie is a short film about a little girl, a young girl, who is basically having trouble going to sleep, having trouble sleeping because she's scared, mostly because her grandmother relayed this story about Mr. Sandman and how he terrorizes little girls who don't go to sleep, of course, basically exacerbating the problem. The movie follows this girl as she struggles to fall asleep, faces her fears, her fear of the dark in particular, and of course faces the hijinks that inevitably abound. And we're going to go ahead and stop there so as not spoil the movie for you. And again, it's a short film, so it's not exactly a dense and deep and complex plot. It's really kind of basic and simple to its advantage, frankly. And that's the thing about this movie that I think is probably the most noteworthy and best strength of it, is that it's a solid concept. It's basically taking the idea or the perspective of what it was like as a child to be afraid of the dark, to have your imagination kind of running wild and kind of scaring yourself. And it does that pretty well. It's a solid concept, and it's living up to that concept by the techniques being used and the story, such as it is, being told. Now, it sets up this lore about Mr. Sandman as this entity that basically comes and checks to make sure you're sleeping, and if you're not sleeping, he does something bad to you, right? And it's a pretty creepy story. It's a pretty cool, solid, interesting concept that I don't know that that's the real thing. My understanding is that's not what Mr. Sandman does, from what I understand of Mr. Sandman and the lore behind it. I think this is made up for this story, this short. I don't know that for sure, but I had not heard this version of it before, but I thought it was pretty good. Pretty creepy. And having grandma tell the kid the story is pretty fun. Like, I'll be honest with you, grandma kind of just out of the blue detailing the story to the kid is a little clunky. It feels a little expository almost, but it does actually work kind of spooky because the way grandma delivers the story kind of feels more like maybe grandma might have dementia or something like that. The way it's played and kind of just coming out of the blue feels like maybe grandma's a little bit off in one way or another. And of course, the kid being by herself there with grandma in that scene doesn't know that, right? And just taking the story to heart. And so the premise is set, and I'm buying into that, and I like it. I think it's pretty creepy, and it's a pretty simple, easy to understand thing of how the kid's scared. And then, of course, the fear gets compounded by the darkness, etc. I'll be honest with you, the movie, even though it starts out kind of like, with a scene towards the end and then flashes back, it didn't really grab me right away, but that was fine because, again, it's not a very long movie, and it did start to pick up the pace and start moving pretty well. But here's an interesting thing. It sets up this cool premise about Mr. Sandman, but it doesn't really track it. It doesn't really stick with this established lore completely. It doesn't abandon it. It's not that it sets it up and never does anything with it. It does. But a lot of what's happening in this rather short film is not tied to that established lore. It's not really tying into the Mr. Sandman. There are some scares in this that are seemingly unrelated to that, which is neither here nor there. The scares are good, and we'll get to that in a minute. But it's just interesting that they take the time to set up this lore and then kind of deviate from it for parts of the movie. It was an interesting choice, not necessarily a deal breaker problem or anything like that, just an interesting choice that I felt like I wanted to mention. The other thing I want to mention that is a little bit more problematic is the production technical issues in this. Now, I want to be clear, this is obviously a low budget kind of DIY, do-it-yourself affair that, this director, Matthew Schmidt, is doing clearly with little to no money. I believe that the little girl is being played by his own daughter, and they clearly don't have a lot of money, and I don't want to be too harsh on this. I don't want to harp on it too much, but the movie is a cut above a lot of the low-budget DIY affair, backyard videos, straight-to-video stuff that we've watched here on the channel before, and a lot of stuff that I'm familiar with, a lot of my friends like. It's better than that stuff. But that also makes me question how much of this is a money issue and how much of it is a skill issue, because there are aspects of this that look like they have more money than the average DIYer, but then there are aspects of it that look like they don't know what they're doing, or they don't have the money, or maybe both, right? Now, one thing is they've got minimal actors. I think there's only 4 actors maybe in the whole movie, maybe 5, and the acting is serviceable. There's not really anything here that's painful. It's fine. The little girl who's the centerpiece, she's the one you're following, is solid. She's pretty good. There's a scene or two where she's not great, but I'd say overall she's more good than bad. She never got on my nerves or really annoyed me, which is saying a lot for a child actor because that's usually what happens. So I'm going to give her a pretty solid mark on that one. The other major character in there who gets a lot of lines, aside from Grandma, is the mom. And she's kind of mid. She's not really all that great. Her line deliveries feel a little bit flat. Grandma, like I said, is giving some dialogue about the lore, and the way it's delivered kind of worked for me because I think it lends itself to questioning if Grandma's mental faculties are all there, and that worked for the story pretty well. But the acting is like I said, serviceable, and to the credit of the actors, these are thin characters, right? Again, it's a 35-minute movie. There's not meaty roles here to sink your teeth into. They're all pretty thin because this is all about kind of like showing the fear and the technique of the scares and stuff like that. So the characters aren't deep. They're thin characters, and so there's not a lot for the actors to work with. So caveat there, right? Now, where I'm really struggling is the actual technical video issues here, right? So we're going to start with the lighting. The lighting is, at best, unimaginative, and a lot of times feels a little too dark. It's kind of doing like that blue darkness thing, kind of maybe looks a little bit like it's kind of like day for night kind of shooting, like they shot it in light and then darkened the video a little bit. Maybe there are scenes that are flatly too dark, like you can't see the expressions of the actors and stuff like that, but it's not horrible. Most of the time it's just kind of flat lighting that doesn't look very interesting or engaging. It's just not very creative, and that makes me feel like maybe it's a bit of a money issue, like they just don't have the money to get the right lights and the right filters and things like that to use. But it also could be a skill issue, like they don't quite know how to light it. But it's not horrible. And again, I'm gonna kind of walk some of this back. I know I'm kind of being a little harsh here, and I'm gonna walk a little bit of it back, but I just want to put it here because it's important. And the other issue is the sound work, the sound design, the Foley work in this is really obvious. Like it's very clear that a lot of this is post-production sound. Like there is like heavy breathing in this, and like a squeaky chair early on. It's just really loud, and like the music is too loud a lot of the times. It's very intrusive and stuff like that. And then the jump scare music is like a little too much. It's just not mixed super well, which feels again like a potential skill issue rather than a money issue. Like the person mixing the sound doesn't really know how to do it. It's just kind of not, just the levels aren't quite right, so it's really noticeable. It's really noticeable. And then lastly, the set design is very bland and sparse. It doesn't look like a place where people actually really live. And this feels maybe a little bit more to me like a budget issue, like they had maybe an empty space, like a house that was not currently being lived in, that was available to them, and they just kind of did a quick set design, put a bed in there, a couple things on a counter and stuff like that, and it just looks very not like a real home, and it's noticeable. But I'm thinking that one might be more budget than anything. So we've got some issues, which you'd kind of expect from a DIY, low budget thing. You got some dialogue that's a little bit, whatever, kind of mid. You've got actors that are decent, actually, which is something you don't always get in DIY. And you've got some technical issues, lighting and sound specifically, that are not up to snuff, not up to par. But the movie still winds up being largely effective despite these shortcomings. First off, the movie's rather well shot, even in the dark, even the scenes that are too dark. It's rather well shot. There's some pretty good camera angles here. There's some decent camera work. It's moving in a way that kind of lends itself to the tension. More on that in a second. But it's actually some decent shots here that are worth noting. And then, I mentioned the sound and the lighting and stuff like that. None of this is so bad that it makes it unwatchable. Like, we've talked about other DIY movies, other low budget movies where the sound in particular is so rough that you can't even hear what's going on. You can't even watch it. Or the movie's so dark that you just can't even tell what the hell's going on, or it's too washed out or whatever. This is not the case here. For the most part, it's perfectly fine. I'm being a little nitpicky on it, if I'm being honest with you. And the reason why, again, is because I felt like the production was a little bit above what I'm used to seeing with these DIY backyard movies. And so because it's a little bit better, I felt like I should point out that it's not great, but it is good. It's not bad. Like, if you had a little bit more money, I'd like to see if it is a skill issue or a money issue. It didn't make the movie unwatchable or painful in the slightest. And that's great because the director does have talent here. He's good at building tension. There's a couple scenes in this movie. Again, it's only 35 minutes long, but there's a couple scenes that really, really work. There's a scene where the little girl has to go up the stairs, and it's dark up the stairs, and she's scared, and then she gets up there and then she forgot something. She's got to go back down, and it's really dark, and she's got to go back down in the darkness. This is shot really well, and it ratchets up the tension really good. This director can build some tension, and this scene in particular was a standout. It was really good because it really puts you in the mindset of a little kid irrationally being scared of the staircase that's dark, and then having to go back and get your little stuffed animal. And it worked. It worked. It really kind of triggered that mindset. If you can remember being a kid and being scared by this kind of stuff, I felt like I was in those shoes again. It was done really well. There's another scene a little later on where the little girl's in bed, and I don't want to spoil the scene too much, but something's coming up and kind of scaring her, and it works really, really well. Like, the jump scares are kind of repeated over and over again, and yet they still remain effective. Even though you kind of know they're coming, it worked. These are good scares. These are solid, man. These are things that would work in a regular big budget mainstream motion picture. But I do have to admit that I felt like this short peaked a little early. Like I said, it kind of goes away from the Mr. Sandman lore, but then it does come back to it. By the time it comes back to the Mr. Sandman lore, I feel like some of the best scenes, some of the best scares have already happened, and it didn't leave much place to go towards the end. Like, the last couple of minutes of this short were not bad, but didn't measure up to what had happened in kind of like the middle area of the short, the middle to end, the beginning of the third act, if you will. And so I did feel like it kind of shot its wad a little early, so to speak. It kind of peaked a little too early and didn't quite punch it at the very end. But that, again, is a minor nitpick. I have these minor nitpicks, but overall, pretty solid. But is solid good enough to get on the syllabus? Let's find out. So, is Mr. Sandman syllabus worthy? No, no, it's not going to be. Like I mentioned earlier, shorts on the syllabus are very, very rare. Short films, we don't do them very often. And when we do, it's because there's something really particularly noteworthy about them. And I have to say, there's nothing particularly noteworthy about this short film. It's solid, but it doesn't really have any kind of pedigree or reputation about it. Like, it's not something I'd heard of before, not something I hear people talking about, other than, of course, Sasha mentioning it to me on social media. There's no Wikipedia page for it. There's not a whole lot of information on the internet about it. There is an IMDb page, and it gave me some information, but it's not really, something that has a cult following or has some buzz or has some notoriety to it. And while that doesn't necessarily preclude it from being on the syllabus, that coupled with the fact that it's a solid short, but it's not amazing, is going to make it miss the mark. Look, there's nothing in here that blew my socks off. It's solid work overall. It's got some flaws like I went into. It's got some high points like that staircase scene in particular, the bed scene, that are really good, but not going to blow my mind. Like if I'm a studio head, I don't think I'm necessarily going to seek Matthew Schmidt out and give him, $50 million to make a movie. That said, I do think he has some talent. And I think that based on the way he did the scares, he could do really well with something like a Conjuring universe movie, something kind of mainstream that has a little bit of a formula to it, and where the focus in the movie really is on some solid jump scares, because I think that is where a strength of his might be. So while I say I, as a studio head, probably wouldn't greenlight that, I don't think it would necessarily be a bad idea. Now, I haven't seen the rest of his work, so I can't say that for certain, but I do think he might have the ability to give some good jump scares in a mainstream horror movie, which is not for nothing, man. That's actually not a bad thing. Most of the problems I had with this short are really actually the technical stuff, right? The shortcomings were technical in nature, and given, a full crew and a budget and people who can light for you and do sound design for you, you might eliminate the things that bothered me the most about this. With a little bit of budget, you might get professional actors who can actually deliver lines. You might get somebody to polish up a script to tighten up the dialogue a little bit. Maybe Matthew Schmidt, with some money and a little bit of support staff, makes something pretty darn cool. I wouldn't put it past him based on what I've seen here. In this case, though, it doesn't necessarily make the mark, but it's nothing to be ashamed of. Like, this is a DIY short that I think he can be proud of. Like, if I'm right and he used his own daughter, he got to have a really fun experience with family members and do something that's really pretty cool and is honestly worth your time. It's only 35 minutes, right? And it's worth your time to check out. It's got a couple good scares in it. It's not bad, man. It's actually pretty good. I was pretty pleased that I watched it. Again, not going to make the syllabus, but I felt like it was 35 minutes pretty well spent. So that's my thoughts on Mr. Sandman. Not syllabus worthy, worth your time. And yeah, it's got some merits to it, got some demerits to it, but I would say go ahead and check it out. I'm pretty sure you can probably find it online pretty easily, and it won't take a whole lot of your day to check it out. And if you do, let me know what you think of it, because I'd like to know if you guys agree with me that it's not bad, but obviously not syllabus worthy. Now, what is worthy is this Trivia Pursuit card that I'm about to read. That's one of the worst segues I've ever done here, but we're going to go ahead and roll with it. And since we're talking about childhood fears and Mr. Sandman, talking about like kind of a psychological fear, so we're going to go with the psychological category on the card today. And here's what we're going to answer. What is the wooden object Tata Kuda uses to finally stop Martin Matthias at the conclusion of the 1978 film Martin? So this is interesting because I know Martin, and I don't think we've talked about Martin. I think we are going to talk about Martin on this channel. I don't think we've actually talked about Martin in a video, although we've mentioned, I think, and in questions. We've had Martin questions before, and I believe I know the answer to this question, but it's kind of a weird question. It's like it's making me second guess myself, and I tend to prattle on to let you guys have a little bit of thought on this, but like the way this question is written is making me overthink this question a little bit. And in the past, I can get myself in trouble by overthinking a question instead of just keeping it simple. So I'm disinclined to kind of spin my wheels on this, and I'm actually going to kind of just keep it simple. Like, we have talked about Martin, like I said, but we haven't done a video on it. But it is a George Romero movie, and it's I don't know. This answer just seems too obvious to me. I don't know. It's bothered me. Now I'm starting to second guess. Okay, you know what? I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop because I'm really starting to talk myself out of the answer I want to give. Okay, so lock in your answer. I'm going to answer it now. Locked in. Cool. Okay, so I think it's just a stake, a wooden stake. I think the answer, but the way this is written, it says wooden object. I think it's making me second guess myself. It's like, what is the stake made of? Something like it, I'm just gonna go stake. I'm sticking with the final answer, and the answer is a stake. Okay, so this is exactly what I'm talking about, where I can talk myself out of something by thinking, oh, maybe they're looking for something a little bit more in depth or description that's descriptive, but nope, they just wanted what I said, a steak. So I got that one right. Did you guys get it right? Have you seen Martin? And if you haven't seen it, you should check it out because it is actually quite good. And we are going to talk about it. I can't remember if we talked. I need to look at my research on this to see if we've actually talked about it and I filmed the video, or if I just thought I was going to film the video. Anyways, that's a topic for another time. Right now, I just want to say thank you guys for sticking around to the end. Let me know if you've got more recommendations, things I should check out, because if it's something I haven't seen before, maybe I'll do a video about it like this one. But until then, I'm just going to say, class dismissed. Ow. No biting. In fact, I used to sit down. No. No, we're not friends now.